Boquist made his comments about taking this whole thing to court, and then he left quickly, and they're still in there deliberating on how they're going to handle this interim process. Boquist made his comments after the attorney that's investigating his comments during the walkout said people here feel Boquist's comments are certainly threatening and pose a credible threat. This special committee on conduct is made up of 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. They're trying to decide interim measures for safety while the Boquist case continues to be investigated. Remember, Boquist is the senator from Dallas who said some things during the walkout, the beginning of it really. One, that if Senator Peter Courtney sent OSP after him, that he would, quote, have hell is coming to visit you personally, is what Boquist said directly to Peter Courtney. And what he told our Pat Doris on camera, referring to Oregon State Police, saying, quote, send bachelors and come heavily armed. I will not be a political prisoner in the state of Oregon. Well, today the attorney investigating Boquist for the Senate said she's heard from multiple people that make her recommend Boquist be kept away from the Capitol.
The reports that I received, which I found to be credible, are if he's willing to threaten the president of the Senate, if he's willing to threaten the Oregon State Police, what will stop him from harming me? So
Mr. Chair, I object to that.
Hang on 1 second. Everyone that's here, you're here to be observing. If you have comments that you want to make, you're going to need to leave the room.
Last week, my wife, staff, and I initiated formal complaints against the Oregon State Senate with the appropriate federal civil authorities. On Friday, I filed a lawsuit in the civil court against the Honorable Peter Courtney, and many of those involved today are listed in the lawsuit. I look forward to seeing this matter in the court. Thank you. Gentlemen, have a good day.
And with that, Boquist left, as I said, quite quickly. We couldn't catch him, track him down to get more comments from him. The gallery here at this hearing, which is a public hearing, definitely very pro-Senator Boquist. And those 4 senators in there deciding what to do in the interim while this investigation is going on are still working on that, whether he be barred from the Capitol, whether he voluntarily stay away and work from a district office, whether they provide an OSP escort for him. All ideas they're discussing right now. Brenda, back to you.
All right, we'll let you get back inside. Keep us posted. Thank you, Tim.